Sometimes history plays a mysterious game with geography. It happens like this. The capital of a state lives, develops, becomes a symbol, and centuries later it ends up on foreign territory. In a legal sense, it is no longer part of the country, but in a cultural, spiritual, and historical sense, it is still its heart. Here are some striking examples of when the ancient capital remained abroad, but did not disappear from memory. Constantinople is one of the most famous cases of a lost capital. Today, it is Istanbul, the largest city in Turkey, and once the heart of Byzantium, Orthodoxy, and Greek Hellenistic culture. For the Greeks, it was not just a capital, but a sacred city, a second Rome. Here they spoke Greek, painted icons, debated theologians, and church domes towered over the Bosphorus. After the Ottomans captured it in 1453, the city ceased to be Greek politically, but remained in the people's memory as a lost treasure. Even centuries later, the idea of reclaiming Constantinople inspired a Greek movement. It was called the Magali idea. Today, Istanbul is a modern metropolis, but it still holds a special place in Greek culture as a city from the past that still resonates in language, symbols, and faith. Skopje is now the capital of northern Macedonia, and once it was the capital of the first Bulgarian kingdom. Nearby is Ohrid, one of the spiritual centers of Bulgaria during the time of Tsar Samuel. These cities were not just places of government, but also centers of education. It was from here that Orthodoxy spread, the disciples of Cyril and Methodius worked, and writing developed. The Bulgarian and Macedonian languages, cultures, and alphabets all have a common root in these places. Today, the borders are different, and interpretations of history are sometimes controversial, but the essence remains. Part of the Bulgarian past lives on in cities that are now Macedonian, according to their passports. And this does not make the Balkans poorer, but only more complex and richer in a cultural sense. Armenia is one of the few countries that had several capitals located abroad. The most famous of them is Ani, a once glorious city that was called the City of 1,001 Churches. Ani was the spiritual, cultural, and commercial center of the Armenian world. Its cathedrals and walls still stand on the Turkish side of the border, a reminder of the Bagratid Empire. Nearby is Kars, the capital of the Armenian kingdom of the same name, and Shirakavan, another residence of the Armenian kings. These lands are now part of Turkey, but for Armenians, they are not just architectural ruins, they are part of national feeling, cultural memory, and pride. Ani is now open to tourists, and for many Armenians, a trip there is almost a pilgrimage to their roots. Next is Kyiv, one of the most striking and complex examples in Eastern Europe. Today, it is the capital of Ukraine, but in the 9th to 13th centuries, it stood as the main city of ancient Rus. Vladimir the Saint reigned here, and the baptism of Rus began in this historic city. Kyiv was called the mother of Russian cities, a spiritual, political, and commercial hub of the region. Over time, the center of power shifted northeast, and Kyiv came under different states: Lithuania, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and later Russia. Today, Kyiv stands as an independent Ukrainian metropolis, its significance spanning the histories of Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. This city, vital to three nations at once, highlights the depth and complexity of their shared past. Number 5, Lithuania. The first capital of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania was not in Vilnius, but in Novogrudok, a city that today belongs to Belarus. It was here that Grand Duke Mindaugas was crowned in the 13th century. Later, the capital moved, but Novogrudok remained in history as the first political center of Lithuania. Today, there is a museum, castle ruins, and the spirit of a multi-layered past. The city, dear to Lithuanians, is now part of the Belarusian cultural map. Pec and Prizren were the spiritual and secular capitals of medieval Serbia. Pec was the center of the Serbian Patriarchate, the seat of Orthodoxy. Prizren was the city of kings and the cultural life of the 14th century. Both cities are now located in Kosovo, but in Serbian tradition, they remain symbols of faith and history. This is an example of how spiritual and cultural capitals continue to live in people's memory, regardless of current borders. The first capital of the Kazakh ASSR was not in Kazakhstan, but in Russia, in Orenburg. In the 1920s, when the Soviet autonomy for the Kazakh people was just being created, this city became its administrative center. The government worked here, documents were printed, and key decisions were made. The choice was pragmatic. There was simply nothing to be done about it. The city was a place of peace and tranquility. There was no suitable city with infrastructure on the territory of Kazakhstan at that time, but Orenburg was. It was located on the border of the steppes, was connected by railways, and historically served as a point of contact between the Russian and Kazakh worlds. In 1925, the capital was moved to Kayseri-Orda, then to Alma-Ata, and Orenburg returned to Russia. But in the history of Kazakhstan, it remained as the starting point of the new statehood, a rare case when the capital was visiting. But played an important role. Next, Georgia. Teoklarjeti, an ancient region in the southeast of modern Turkey, was the cradle of Georgian statehood. Here, among the hills and monasteries, the future united Georgia was born. In the Middle Ages, the country's political and spiritual centers were located here, such as Artaani, Oshki, and Tebedisi. The Oshki monastery, built in the 10th century, still stands, dilapidated but majestic. Artani was an important crossroads for trade and missionary activity. These places connect Georgians to the origins of their faith, architecture, and national identity. Today, they are on the territory of Turkey, but for Georgia, they are still part of its history. These cities are not just ancient ruins, but symbols of where Georgia, Georgian spirituality, and statehood once originated. Velihrad was the capital of Great Moravia in the 9th century. This early Slavic state united the lands of today's Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and Austria. Velihrad became the center of not only politics, but also faith. It was here that Cyril and Methodius arrived to preach in the Slavic language. The history of Slavic writing and Christianity began here. That is why Velihrad is considered the spiritual capital of all Slavic culture. Today, it is part of the Czech Republic, but is also significant for Slovakia as a common cultural heritage. This is not just a city with an ancient name. This is the place where the history of the Slavs as we know it began. Alba Iulia, or Gyulafehérvár in Hungarian, was once the most important center of the Kingdom of Hungary. Coronations, meetings of princes and clergy took place here. The city was the true heart of Transylvania. Today, Alba Iulia is a Romanian city, but Hungarian traces are everywhere, in architecture, in history, in names. It was here that the unique Transylvanian culture was formed, absorbing Hungarian, Romanian, and Saxon influences. After the collapse of Austria-Hungary, the region became part of Romania, but for Hungary, Alba Iulia remains a symbol of past greatness. Not only tourists come here, but also those who are looking for the roots of their history.